Welcome back to another episode of BYOD, Build Your Own DApp. This is a series where we take a project and try to build it from scratch. Now, for today's DApp, we are creating a crowdfunding platform. Now, think of crowdfunding platforms such as GoFundMe, where people can come, they can create a project, and they can get funding. A little bit of a sneak peek just for you. This crowdfunding app, what it does is that you can create your own project, and you can see all of the different projects within this app itself, and the creating of the project and tracking of the funding and whatnot is handled by the smart contract itself. So if we go into start your project over here, we will come to this page where you can create our own project, right? Let's give the project a title like BYOD Fund, right? Organization KALP Studio, and this is a fund to start the BYOD series. Let's just give it some description over here. Funding goal. So here we can set however much of a goal we want. So let's say 1,000. Wallet address. So for the wallet address, what we do is we go into our KALP Studio, we copy our wallet address, go back to the app, and we paste our wallet address, right? And fundraising deadline, let's just say by today. We need a project image URL. This can be any URL, so let's just use google.com for now. And once we click on this, our app will be successfully created, or rather our project will be successfully created. So people can come in, create their own app, ask for funding. Now, let's go into what we actually need, right, to start building this app. And don't worry guys, everything will be here on our GitHub. And the link for this will be provided to you. We have our backend, or our smart contract, which is going to be deployed on the KALP DLT blockchain. And for that, we're going to be using Golang mainly to code the smart contract. So just make sure that you have Golang version 1.20 when you are doing that. And the best way to check that is by, again, if I go into my terminal, if I do Go version, we should see that there's a Go version 1.20. And similarly, node-v, we can see a node version of 22.9, right? These are just what I'm using right now. And in order to install all of this, if you go into Golang's go.dev website, and we go to the all releases page, it'll prompt you to actually download 1.24 or the latest version, whichever it is. We don't want to do that. We want to go into the stable versions and kind of just archived versions, kind of scroll down until you see 1.20, and 1.20.6 will be fine. Any one of these will be fine. So grab that and then install it for your architecture. Whether you're using like a Linux, a Mac, a PC, it has installation for all of them. Now, as for Node, what I prefer using is NVM, Node Version Manager. And what this allows you to do is to have multiple versions of Node, again, on your PC. So you don't have to just install one version. What you can do is you can switch between them. So install NVM, and from that you can install Node 22. That's just what we're using today. Now, let's start off with the smart contract now. So what we have is essentially a smart contract which is for crowdfunding. So it'll have three main functions. It'll have an init function to initialize the smart contract. And the reason why we need an init function is, again, KALP DLT on its own, whenever it deploys smart contracts, it deploys them as upgradable smart contracts. So that's why we need an init function for that. We'll have another function called create project, and we'll have two more functions to get those projects. So we can get project by ID, or we can get all projects, right? These are the other two functions. So let's actually start building the app itself. So over here, I've opened my terminal. Let me just change directory to our projects, desktop. And over here, I'm going to make a new folder for crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, and we're going to change into that folder as well. Now, what we want to do is we'll actually create another folder for contracts here. Let's do that first. And here what we want to do is we want to do go mod init. And we want to give like a name for our project. So if we do an ls over here, we can see that there is a go mod over here now. Okay. So let's open up our Visual Studio Code. And by accident, I didn't change directory into here. So I'm just going to move this go mod into the contracts folder and change into that. And by clicking on the go.mod file, we can see it just contains a little bit of information, right? So let's open up our trusty terminal over here. And what we're going to do is actually, first of all, we're going to head over to the KALP SDK documentation. So for creating smart contracts on the KALP DLT, they have also given us the KALP SDK, which helps us to initialize the contract, create functions, manage state within the contract, and contains like other useful functions as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this line, and we're going to paste this here. So the -u is for universal install, so just get rid of that, and it will install the KALP SDK over here. So after you do your go get, right, what happens is that you'll see in your go.mod file that there's a bunch of changes here, right? It installed, added a bunch of dependencies. So now what you want to do is you want to create like a new file. Let's call this crowdfunding.go. And this is going to be package main, and let's create our smart contract struct as well. So struct KALP SDK.contract, and let's just begin by creating our main function as well. So the way we do that is func main chain code error. We're going to be using KALP SDK to create like a new contract instance. KALP SDK dot new chain code, and add and contract like so. What we're going to do is we're going to do some error handling over here. So if error, and Golang just makes us do this. It makes us handle errors and whatnot. Otherwise, it just won't compile. fmt.printf error creating contract. And now what we're going to do is we want to use this chain code object over here to start up a new chain code. So chain code dot start. We don't want dot error, and error not equal to nil, and fmt dot printf error starting chain code. So just a little bit of error handling. That's our main function. So let's just jump into like what the structs are going to be, how it's going to be structured, and all of that good stuff. So within this smart contract, we have only a single struct, which is for the project. And the project contains a few different fields. It contains a project ID, it contains a title, a description, the goal. And the goal is essentially how much money is needed to be raised for this project. It has a raised field as well, how much money is raised. It has an image URL. It has a creator, it has a wallet address, and it has a timestamp. So let's just create that struct first, and then we'll jump into creating the create project function. Type project struct. So the way we create a struct is very simple. The field name followed by what the type is. This is going to be a string, and this is going to be JSON and ID, like so. Similarly, we want to do the same thing for the rest of them, right? So how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think this should be enough. Well, let's just see. So we had an ID, we have a title, we have a description, we have the goal, we have the amount raised, we have the image URL if you want to add that, and the goal and raised, these are not going to be strings, these are going to be numbers. So here we're going to do like floats. Float 64, let's do that. A 64-bit float. Image, we have creator. Wallet address, and lastly we need a timestamp. So we have the struct now. So let's just move forward and start creating our create function, create project app, or create project function. But before we do that, let's just create a tiny little function for initialization. So this is going to be a very small function, func star, let's just say C contract init, and this is SDK, KALP SDK, dot interface, transaction context interface, right? And this will have no other input variable, and it will return an error. So this function, we can make it so that it can only be called once, but honestly, for this project, we don't really need it. So onward to our create project app. Now this is where the main magic happens, right? So this is func, and if you guys don't know, these are receiver functions over here. So the way you recognize whether a function is interacting with the blockchain itself is whether it has this receiver function or not. And this is just the struct for the KALP SDK contract. Create project. SDK, KALP SDK, transaction context interface. And we're going to have like a few inputs for this, right? So we need a project ID. So we need an ID, which is string. We need a title, which is again a string. We need a description. We need an image URL. Creator. We need a wallet address. And we need a goal. Float 64. So we have all of this input. We won't be, whenever we create a project, it'll have essentially no money raised at all. So that's why we're not taking that as an input. We'll just set that to 0, to be honest. And this will return an error. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to check whether this particular project ID already exists or not. We want the project ID to be unique. So let's start by doing that. Exists, error not equal to SDK dot get state. Colon equal to get state, and we want to use ID. We handle the errors. So I'm just going to use this. Fail to read project v error. And we want to make sure that this project does not exist, right? So if exists not equal to nil, return fmt.errorf and exists, right? Something like that. And what we do is we put in the value of the error, right? Or rather, we put in the value of the ID. Right, and this is supposed to be a string. There we go. Let's return nil here so that this stops shouting at us. So once we do that, we can get the current blockchain timestamp for our timestamp, which is over here. So we do that by doing this, right? Timestamp is equal to un64 time.now, right, dot unix. This will get us the current timestamp. And now let's just create our project. So we create a new variable called project, which is equal to project, this one. And we are using the project struct. So we have an ID and all of this good stuff. So ID is ID. Title is title. What else do we have? Description. Description is description. Goal is goal. We have raised is 0. And raised is 0 because whenever a project is created, it won't immediately have funding. So, and now image will be image. Creator is creator. Wallet address is wallet address. And we have timestamp is timestamp. Now, what this says is that cannot use timestamp variable for UN as a string value. So we did something wrong here. String value. So what we did wrong was essentially we put timestamp as a string instead of as a UN64, right? So we put that as a UN, and what we do is, now that error is gone, right? Now this wallet address is a type of string, right? So what is it saying? Wallet address is, oh, I forgot to put string here. So now it's just assuming that it's a float 64, right? And now we should be good, right? So once we do that, what we want to do is we want to kind of, we have already created the struct, right? The object, right? Or rather a JSON object. We want to kind of deconstruct it into like a bytes array. So the way we do that is called marshalling. We marshal the JSON. So project JSON error JSON dot marshal and then project. And what we do is we'll just copy this and check to see if there's any error, right? Fail to serialize project. And after we serialize it, right, Now what we want to do, we already have this bytes array, right? The next step would obviously be putting that into the blockchain, right? And the way that kind of works is the KALP DLT has key value pairs, right? It basically stores key value pairs. So we need to create a key, and for that key, the value would be the project JSON. And because we are checking whether a particular project ID exists or not, right, get stateful ID, we're just going to use that as a key. So error is equals to SDK, put state without KYC, and we need the key, which is just ID, and the data, which is project JSON. And then we do a little bit more error handling over here. Fail to store project. There we go. So that essentially is a very simple create a project function, right? So we just create a very simple project. What we're going to do next is we're going to get a particular project given a project ID. So what we do is this. We create a function called getProjectById. We do the same by doing this, right? Let's just create a new function called contract getProjectById. We have the SDK, which is transaction context interface, and we just need to give it an ID string. Now, what this thing returns is it returns the project, and if there's any error, it returns that. Now, it's very simple. We already did the same, to be honest, over here. So we're just going to copy this. We get the state for this ID, and this is project JSON. What is it saying? Return, it does not have enough return values, right? So nil and that. Return something. We'll take care of that later. So we already have the project JSON over here. What we want to do is we want to check if it is nil, because if it is nil, that means the project does not exist, and then we want to handle that error case. So over here we check to see if it is not nil. We just need to do the opposite over here. Project JSON is nil. Return project with ID does not exist. Now, we create what we want to do is we want to create a new object, or rather a new variable, where we can store our project details. So we do a var project, which is of type project. And what we want to do is above here, we did a JSON.marshal to convert it, to serialize this. So now to convert it back into like an object, what we want to do is we want to unmarshal it. Error is equal to JSON.unmarshal. And we want to unmarshal project JSON into project. And we want to do it to end project. So this will take project.json, all of the values in that, unmarshal it, and then put that into this variable. Very simple stuff. And a little bit of error handling again. If error is not equal to nil, fail to deserialize project. And that's pretty much it. Now all you have to do is return that project value, right? So return, and project, and nil for the error value. This will essentially give us back the project details that we have. Now, what we want to do is we want to kind of see what all the projects are within this. So let's create a function called getAllProjects. And for this, I'm just going to copy and paste the code that I've already written. And let's just go over what this is. Contract, and this is contract. SDK. So what this is doing, what this is doing, that it is getting the state by range, right? It's getting all of the states for a start key and an end key, because the only state that we are saving here is the project ID, so it just gets all of them. And it returns us a result iterator over here. And what this iterator does is that it has a few functions, right? So first of all, error handling, and then defer. We want to close this iterator. And now we want to loop over this iterator to get the value of each project that it has. So as I was saying, this results iterator has a few functions. It has next function, which tells us whether this iterator has a next value. And for every time it does, we loop again. And once we loop, we choose the next value, .next, and we take the value from the response. So results iterator.next, it'll give us a query response, which we then take the value out of. Pretty simple stuff. We again create another variable project. Over here, what we're doing is we are actually creating an array, right? Because we have multiple projects which are going to be going on at the same time. So this gives us the project array. And once we unmarshal that into the project variable, we just append that into our array. So we have all of them. And then we just return the projects array, right? So that we get all of the projects back. Cool. So that is actually our smart contract done. Now, what we need to do before actually deploying this is two things. We do a go mod vendor, and we do a go build. Go mod vendor, it creates this vendor folder which contains all of the dependencies all downloaded, and go build, it creates the executable. So once these two are done, what you want to do is you want to head over to your Finder or your File Explorer or whatever. You want to go into your crowdfunding contracts, and you'll see all of your files over here, which you have. You want to kind of compress them, convert them into a zip file. Let's just call this crowdfunding. And we'll be using this to deploy our smart contract. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to KALP Studio. Now, how does KALP Studio kind of help us with all of this, right? It does a few things for us. One, KALP Studio has its own blockchain, which is called the KALP DLT, which is based on Hyperledger Fabric, and it is pretty secure, and we are essentially using Golang because of that. So it helps us with two main things. Number one, it helps us deploy our smart contracts in a very easy, efficient manner onto the KALP DLT. And number two, what it does is that it generates API endpoints for us so that we can interact with it very easily. If we didn't have these two things, then we would have to deploy our smart contract manually, right? Which will take an entire deploy script. It'll take, and in order to interact with it, we need another package to interact with the blockchain. We need all the connection information. We don't need any of that over here. So let's head over to console.kalp.studio, and let's open up the KALP Instant Deployer. I've already deployed one of these, so I'm just gonna show you how to deploy them. Crowdfunding 2, and since the category doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to choose NFT, continue, and this is what we had zipped up. So we're going to take this, drag and drop, and we're going to click on continue. And like with the click of a few buttons, right, literally just a few buttons, we are already set to deploy this. And once again, we are deploying this on the test net right now, because again, we are playing around with the smart contract. We want to kind of test it, how it works and everything. And once it has been successfully submitted, it will take just a few minutes for this to deploy. And once there's a success status over here, you can move forward. I've already deployed this, so let's kind of skip over that part. When you deploy this, you want to kind of click on the generate endpoints, right? It'll be kind of look like this. Once you click on that, you'll see that all of your functions that you created. We created 3 main functions: create project, get project by ID, and get all projects. They automatically, it already knows that there's 3 functions. And for them, we have the route. So we have our endpoints, and we have our parameters. So makes it pretty easy for us to interact with it. So let's click on init, and let's go to Postman. So I'm going to create like a new post request over here. So let's test out what it does, right? So we have our init, and all of these are going to be post requests. Under headers, we need an X API key. And we can get that API key from check params, API auth key, and here. Under API key generation, you can create new API keys as well. And once that is done, we want to go into the body, copy the body JSON, and paste that here, and make sure that it's on JSON. And once you click on this, it'll tell you that, hey, your query was successful, right? You called query successfully, which is pretty cool. Let's try to create a project. So invoke create project. Let's copy over the params. For our project ID, let's just use like something like that, 100,000. Title test. Description, let's just use test. Image, let's use google.com. Creator is Rohan. Wallet address, we'll just use our own wallet address for now. And we need a goal. Let's say this is like 1,000. Let's click on send. Oh, our goal must be a string. So let's just have it as a string, and then click on send. Now, as we can see, we have successfully created a project. But that's not the only thing, right? Although that transaction was successful, let's see if it shows up on Get All Projects. So let's just do that and try to get all of the projects which were created, right? So it successfully evaluated Get All Projects. So our 100,000 test is right here with the timestamp, wallet address, creator. Everything works fine. And this was just a bit of testing that we did before. And this was the BYOD fund that was there in the demo at the very beginning. So yeah, it works. So what we're going to do now is actually move on to the front-end portion of it.
Let's move on to the next section of the tutorial, which is the actual front-end part of our DApp. Now, in this DApp, let's do a little bit of a recap. Up till now, we have created our backend, which is the smart contract. We have created the smart contract in Go, and we have deployed it using KALP Studio on the KALP DLT testnet. After deploying it, we have also tested the three functions which are available in this smart contract, which are create project, get project by ID, and get all projects, which is great. We have also tested the same using Postman. So now what we want to do is we want to create a front end to kind of display creating projects and all the projects which are available. So if you head over to this GitHub repository, which will be linked in the description of this video. And what we want to do is we want to clone the crowdfunding branch. So in a previous video, we have already done certify. Now we're going to be cloning the crowdfunding branch. So let's kind of do that. So here's my terminal, and I'm in my crowdfunding folder. So let's do a git clone -b crowdfunding, and paste my link over here. Cool. And now I'm just going to do one very simple thing first, which is over here. We go into our crowdfunding folder. Let's kind of just rename this. Let's rename this to crowdfunding. Great. Now, once we're in our crowdfunding folder, let's cd into crowdfunding. And if we open up our code editor, which is VS Code over here, we will see a few things, right? We can see that this is a Next app. And let's open up our terminal over here as well. And let's just do a normal npm I to install all the dependencies. Let's just wait for this a little bit. Cool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to be running npm dev. Run dev. Now this starts up a local server where our front end is going to be. And if we click on localhost 3000, we'll see, oh, we already have like a template for our crowdfunding project, which is great. Now, we need a few things before we can make this functional. So let's kind of go over what we have over here. So let's open up our app folder. As you can see, there are a few folders over here. There's a create page, there's a project page, and then there's a types, just a types file, TS file. And we also have our main page over here. And we also have a few more things. We also have like our sample env over here. So let's actually create our env file over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be copying this and pasting it right in the root directory. And I'm going to be renaming this to just .env. Great. So now we need 4 env variables. We need a public API URL. We need a contract address, a wallet address, and an API key. So let's just go ahead and do that. Yes. So let's head on over to our KALP Studio. And we have our smart contract over here. So for the URL, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just copying any one of these routes that we've created. And we're going to paste that. And we're going to remove everything up until KALP. So we should have HTTPS gateway-api.kalp.studio/v1/contract/KALP. Cool. The next thing we need is the public contract address. So we have our smart contract address over here, and copy that and paste the same over here. We need a wallet address. So we'll just use the wallet address, which is provided under params over here. Need to copy that and paste that here. So this will be the wallet, which will be actually doing all the transactions for our DApp. And next we need like an API key. So for our API key, let's head on over to API auth key. Or actually, for this, I'm going to be creating a new API key. So I'm just going to deactivate our previous API key. And I'm going to create a new one called Crowdfunding. Let's do that. Let's give it a very good description. Crowdfunding DApp API key. Let's create now. So we have our new API key over here. Let's copy that. And let's paste that API key over here. Great. So now, once we head on over to our crowdfunding and reload this, we should see our projects, and we should see everything that we've done on Postman up till now. So this will be our kind of like our home page. So let's go back to the code for a little bit, right? Everything seems to be working. Let's go back to our home page, which is over here. So what we are doing on our homepage is this. We are actually fetching our project. And this is, I believe, calling the get all projects API. So we have our, we have a API config variable over here, which is an object, API config object, which has the URL, which is getting the URL from our env. We have our API key. We have our contract address. We have the network blockchain, which is just going to be testnet and KALP, and our wallet address. Cool. Now, we are setting up our URL over here. So we are getting the URL from our env, and this is why we need the URL to be kind of shortened to just /v1/contract/KALP, so that we can create our own routes, which are generated over here. Let's go back to here. These routes using the rest of the information that we have. So /query, because this is going to be a GET request from the blockchain side, followed by the contract address, and /get all projects. So this will be our URL that we'll be hitting. And that's how we kind of set it up over here. Cool. So here we're going to be using fetch. So either if you want to use Axios or if you want to use fetch, that's up to you. But for this one, we're going to be using fetch. It's going to be a post request. Under headers, again, we want to have the same stuff that we have over here, which is the API auth key. So our x-API key is going to be our API key that we got from our env, and the content type is going to be application JSON. This just makes it so that our body for the request is a JSON object. Great. And for the body, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using JSON.stringify, and we need a few things. And these things can be seen from right here. So if we go to get all projects, check params, and this is essentially what we are sending on the body side for the API. So we need our network, our blockchain, our wallet address, and under args, we don't send anything. So that's exactly what we're sending. Now, once we have set up our request, we will await it. And if everything's okay, the API response, our data, will be just response.json. And if there's any error, there's also some error handling over here. If there's some error fetching the request, if we get like a 400 for some reason, and also if the status is not successful, then it will also throw a new error called API return unsuccessful response. Right? Now, what we're going to be doing here is this. We are kind of expecting our data to be looking like this. So if we go up into our Postman, let's actually go into here. Let's copy this. Let's paste this over here. And under XAPI key, let's use our new API key, which is this. And under body, we have all of this. Oh, goodness. So let's just send this. So what we are expecting is the data that this API kind of returns to us will be under result.result. And this will be in an array of objects. And this array of objects will contain all of these different fields that we'll be using. So within our code, what we have done is this. Since it returns like an object rather than array, and if you see that if you have no projects created, it will just return like an empty object over here. So that's why I've done if the data.result is not equal to this empty object, then it will be an array. So I'm mapping that result for every project, and I'm giving all of these parameters that we get along with the number of days left, which is the calculate days left function. Start from here again. So what I'm doing is I'm mapping this result, right, which is going to be an array with all of the elements of the actual object. I'm just going to use a spread operator for this, and I'm going to be also sending like a days left kind field, which is supposed to be the number of days left, but instead, since we have not captured that over here, I'm just going to be using this timestamp, and I'm just going to return how many days ago was this project actually created. So this is what this calculate days left function is doing. It's actually calculating the how many days ago was this project created. And I'm just going to reverse it because the latest projects are going to be at the very top of this array, and the earlier projects are going to be at the very end of the array. So we want the earliest projects first. All right. And we have our function home, which is projects, set projects, again, use states, setting loading, errors, and whatnot. Just a few states for this. And this is basically our variable in which we are setting the array for the projects. And over here, under use effect, we are calling that load projects function, which we have created over here. We have actually created a load projects function, right, which is just calling the fetch projects function, sorry. And then it's setting the projects with the fetched projects over here. Pretty simple stuff. Just a use effect every time that this website reloads, it fetches the projects again. And that's where the loading part also comes in, right? It will say loading projects, and then once that's loaded, it will show our projects over here, which is pretty cool. All right. So, and this is just normal, just CSS with Tailwind. So now let's kind of move into starting, or rather creating our own project. So let's click on that create project button, and this will kind of take you to our create /create page, which is create a project. And you'll see there's a form over here, a project title, organization name, description, funding goal, wallet address, and your project image URL. So let's kind of enter these fields and see what happens. So let's create a project called Balloons. Organization name, Balloons Incorporated. This is a funding project to spread awareness about balloons. And the LLO. Oh, sorry for my misspelling. Balloons and their impact on the environment. Giving a new alternative. So a little bit of a description over here. Let's set our funding goal at like maybe 1,000 US dollars. Our funding goal is going to be in USD. Let's get a wallet address for this as well, right? So let's head back to KALP Studio. Under KALP Studio wallet, I have a bunch of wallets which are already created, custodial wallets. I'm just going to be taking one of them, which is this one. And let me just check if it is not. Yeah, it's not. So let's put in that wallet address, and we need a project image URL. So let's go here and let's do this. Balloons images. So let's go under images, and let's select select this one. I guess anyone will do. So we need to copy the image URL. So save image, copy image address. That's what you want. Let's just go here, paste this, and yeah, and this is exactly what we need. Or what we can do is we can also create our own image and host it somewhere on the internet, and just go that way. So after pasting in our project image URL, let's actually create the project. So what this does is it actually creates another project for us, right? So now, as you can see on our homepage, we have our balloons project over here, which took the image from Google and used it as a banner for our crowdfunding project. And let's kind of go into like the code of how this is happening. So under app, you'll see the create folder and page.tsx. So we have our API config again over here. We can honestly put this in like another file and then just import it, but that's fine. It's the same thing. And what we're doing here is we have a function called create project page, which has all of this code over here. So create project page is our main function. And it has a few things. It has like, we are using the user router from Next. We have a bunch of states over here. This is the more important of the states, as this is the state for the actual form data. So if you look at the actual, let's go back to KALP Studio for a bit and see what we need for our create project. So we have an ID, we have a title, description, image, creator, wallet address, and goal. So here, this is exactly what we have. A title, a description, a goal, image, wallet address, organization name, and deadline. Now, what happens when we actually click on this form submit button? So as you can see over here, when we create a new project, we have this form over here, which is this entire, under this card, right? There's a form, and then there's a submit button for this form. Right. So for that, what we have done is we've actually created a handle submit button over here. So first of all, we're going to be preventing default, so the page doesn't reload, set loading to true, and set error to blank. Pretty normal stuff. And here's where we're actually creating our project stuff. So we need to create a project ID. If we go back to KALP Studio, there's always a project ID associated with this project. So for the project ID, what we're doing is we're using math.random. So math.random generates a number between 0 and 1, and we're just multiplying that by 1000, and we're taking the floor of it. So this basically just generates a number between 0 and 999. And we're just converting it into a string, so we can have like 999 different projects over here, right? You can use your own ID generation algorithm. You can also use UUID if you want, but for now we are just doing this. Again, we're going to be setting up our URL as we did for our homepage. The only difference here is that because this is an actual function which changes the state of the blockchain, that's why there's a /invoke here instead of a /query. If it was just a GET request, then it would have been /query. And at the very end, there's create project, which is the function name. Now, over here, as you saw on our main page, it was a fetch request. So we were using fetch to do send the post request. Here we're using Axios. So this is just to kind of illustrate how you can use both fetch and also Axios, whatever you prefer. Honestly, I prefer using Axios to this. So axios.post, and we have our URL followed by our body. So our body will be need to set up like this. If you go back to KALP Studio and you look at the params for create project, you will see that all of these different fields is what you need to send. So you have your network, blockchain, wallet address. These are kind of set in stone. And then you have your arguments, which is your function parameters, right? So we have our ID, our title, our description, image, creator, wallet address, and goal. So we have most of the things in our form. The only thing we didn't have was the project ID. And the creator is going to be the organization name. And that's the only difference over here. In our smart contract, what we can also do is we can create another parameter for expiry. Like until when do you want this project to appear? So you can add that as well in your smart contract. Go ahead and play around with the smart contract, deploy it, play around with the front end. It's all good. So this is our body. And similarly, we have our headers, our request headers over here, which is the XAPI key again. And also the content type is going to be JSON. Cool. So we await this. And if the response, if there's no response or data, that means that there was a error creating the project, right? So that's why it's throwing an error here. And once, if everything's okay, your data will be actually in response.data. And we just check for a few things, for example, the status. If we kind of go back to here, there's always a status of success over here. So you can check against that. You can check against whether it's 200. So we're checking against the status over here. And then if this, if it is a success, all it's doing is using router.push. That's why we have our use router here. So the next router, we're just pushing to our homepage over here. Cool. So that's why it redirected us. Once we created the project, it redirected us to the homepage. Otherwise, it'll throw a new error for failed to create a new project. Cool. And then finally, it sets loading to false. So this finally block just occurs every time anything happens over here, even if it's an error. This finally block will run. So we're just setting set loading to false over here. All right, cool. So let's kind of look at the card over here, right? We have a card over here, which we got from I believe this is shared CN. Yeah, looks like shared CN. Let me just double confirm this. Oh, it's a Redux UI, not shared CN. We're using Redux over here. So yeah. So we just get this card in which we have our form, and on submit, we do a handle submit, which is calling our function over here. Again, a bit of CSS. We're just setting up the entire form over here with our organization name. This is our project title, organization name, each individual part of this form. We have to set up like an input for that as well, right? An input for this, we have text area. For the description, we have an input for our funding goal, etc., right? What's more important is that this funding goal is of type number. So, and we have a minimum of 1, so we can kind of control that. That's why it sets it to this thing, where we can go up and down, right? Because it's going to be a number. And wallet address, and then finally we have our project URL, and at the very end is our submit button. So button type submit. So this submits the actual form, and disabled while loading. So you can't spam click it. So yeah, that's our create page, and we've already demoed that, and it gets us back to balloons. The last thing that we want to see is how to use this. Let's go back to KALP Studio. This final function, which is get project by ID. Right. So what does this do? So let's go back to our browser. And if you see, we have already created these two projects, right? Which we get from get all projects. But we also have like a view project button over here, which kind of gets us to slash project slash some number. All right, so where do we get this number from? This is actually the project ID. So if we go back, this is 929, and this is project ID 461. And where did this project ID come from? Again, we generated this when we were actually creating our project. So this project ID over here, that's where this is being generated. So once we click on this, this is essentially a page for every project. So how do we create that in Next? So if you see, we have our project and then slash and then square brackets within which there is an ID. So that's where we are getting this ID from, which is like a parameter for this particular page. So that's why if we go into the page.tsx for this, we don't have to create individual pages for every project. We just have to create one template and pull in all of the data from the smart contract itself. So we have our interface for our project over here. Again, our API config, and we have our project page. The ID we are getting from the used params from Next. That's used params over here. Next slash navigation. And this is essentially the project ID. And we'll be needing this to kind of pull data from the smart contract itself. Again, we have our project, our loading and copied and whatnot. All of these use states. So let's kind of see what's happening in the use effect. Because as soon as we enter this page, we'll need to pull some data in order to display that. So if there's no ID, then we just return. So for example, if we go something like this, it'll show an error over here, right? So that's why that's there. We'll just return and it'll show an error. But we will get an ID from that. We have created a function called fetch project. Again, we are setting up our URL to call the blockchain function. And this time we're calling get project by ID. And again, since we're getting all of these data from the blockchain, that's why there's a query over here. So once our URL is set up, we're going to be using fetch again. So await fetch, we're going to be giving it our URL. And our method is going to be post, again, headers. And in the body, what we do is we go back to get project by ID, check params, and we see that we have to send it an ID over here. So that's exactly what we're doing. JSON.stringify all of this this object along with the project ID. If everything's okay, we get our data in response.json. And again, more error handling and whatnot. So with this data, what we do is we actually set our handle copy. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So we get our data from this response.json. Then we check to see if everything was a success. So we check the success tab, success string, and we also check the data.result of success. So if we go back to our Postman over here, we see that there's a status over here. We're checking that status, and we're also checking the result of success. This is a Boolean, so if it is true, this will automatically be true, right? So this is going to be a Boolean. And if everything is fine, we set project with data.result.result. And result.result just comes up with all of the data for that particular project, as we kind of wrote it in our smart contract. All right, and finally, what it's doing is it's calling the fetch project function over here after defining it, and it changes every time. It's dependent on this ID, right? So every time this ID changes, this use effect will be called again. So that's basically what that means. All right. So once that happens, our data is set, and if we go down here, so we put it under project, right? So let's F this. Okay. So there's a bunch of error handling over here. So here's what we are displaying if everything is okay. So if everything is okay, we have our project.image over here, project.title. So we are displaying our image that we got from Google, essentially. And then followed by like the project.creator, right, which is by Balloons Inc. over here. We have our project.title over here, which is just balloons, and also the description. So we are actually kind of displaying everything over here. And also, what you're doing is we're getting the project.raised to local string and project.goal to local string. So we have the amount raised over here and the goal over here, and along with like a bar, a slider bar over here. And we have our days left. How many days ago was this created? So if we go over here, you'll see that this was done 3 days ago, and this was just done right now. So this was like 0 days ago. Cool. Along with, we have set up like a QR of sorts. So we're essentially creating like QR code so that people can scan it and also send money to this project, which is actually pretty cool. We have our project.wallet address over here, which is under this code element over here. And we can also have like a button to copy this particular wallet address as well. So if everything works well, we have copied our wallet address over here. And we have our other text, which is scan the QR code and whatnot. If you guys want to go over like the QR code, kind of the code for that and how the copying is being handled, it's all over here. And then just a bunch of loading and error handling and whatnot. So let's go back to our page. So as you can see, with this DApp, we've actually created like a whole front end for our crowdfunding project DApp. So what we can do is you can create projects, we can get all projects, and we can also display individual projects, which is actually pretty cool. If you're just learning, starting out, trying to learn, this would be like a great project to create. And everything is done step by step in this tutorial itself. So let's kind of move forward and let's kind of do our conclusion now. Yes?
in this video, what we have learned is how to create like a crowdfunding project, right? Something very similar to GoFundMe or something like that. We can store projects, we can create projects, we can get all projects, and we can also get individual projects as well. We can add much more functionality to this, like to change the raised value, to update that value for a particular project. We can do that as well. So we started off with the smart contract, and then we created a very simple front end, right? This has almost no CSS. With a little bit of styling, this might actually look good. And we saw how to deploy our smart contract, generate endpoints, and also to integrate those within our front end and having that actually work. So if you guys want to learn more about this, make sure to join our Discord community, right? If you have questions, you want to help people out, you want to just be part of the community, come join. All of that social information will be in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and in the comments, if you guys could tell me some of your favorite projects that you want to build using KALP Studio, comment down below. Thank you for watching, and see ya.